me start then by introducing this motion, which is what is the future of CRM? And of course, really the $6 million question is, can we achieve this CRM nirvana? You know, can we keep most of the company's customers happy most of the time? Now, Henley Business School have worked in collaboration with CDC to do some research around the whole customer service issue. And I thought I'd just share with you a few of our initial headline findings, which are really quite fascinating. 75%, for example, of the people that we surveyed agree and strongly agree that Britain's consumers are becoming increasingly dissatisfied with the standards of customer service that they receive from companies in general, which is a pretty damning indictment, really. 65% say that companies don't really fully understand them. So they still feel that companies still don't have that good customer insight to really understand what customers want and what they want from the right kind of level of service. What's quite staggering as well is that 80% agree and strongly agree that they would like to initiate a contact with a company rather than a company initiate the contact with them. So when they are good and ready, they want to go out and talk to companies, not the other way around. So it kind of says a lot for our outbound call centres, really. And finally, 80% find it intrusive if companies do contact them when they're not good and ready. There are many more findings from that, but I thought I'd just start off with a few of those, which really does question whether it is possible to keep most of the customers happy most of the time. So I think some of the challenges that I see that we're facing from this whole area is this issue of actioning customer insight, particularly at the front line, and particularly recognising the role of sentiment and emotion in that, and whether we really do understand how to engage with our customers in meaningful ways, and in that respect, really, whether we can actually measure the right aspects of customer satisfaction. You know, when companies have these great long questionnaires and so forth, which ask every detail of that kind of encounter, are they really capturing those areas that make up a great customer experience? The other area that I think is hugely important here is the whole role of social CRM and what role that plays in moving us forward here, and how we can use that to really effectively engage our CRM strategy with the whole role of social media and social networking. So it might be useful to pick up that on our debate as well. And of course, finally, whether companies do still really have the right skills and competences amongst their staff to be able to capitalise on this whole role of the future of CRM for the future. Okay, so that is a little bit of an introduction here. What I'd like to do now is go through the panel members and give them 3 or 4 minutes each to tell us what their perspectives are and what their views are. So over to Jonathan first of all.
Well, my name's Jonathan Pyefinch. I work for CDC Software, who's sponsoring this event today. We're a global software company with about 10,000 customers, about 1,400 employees, and we offer both on-premise, cloud and hybrid solutions, both front office, which we're going to be talking about today, and also back office. I head up the professional services team in the UK, Ireland and Benelux, and so I have a team of people who implement our services products. Today, for me, one of the areas I'd like to discuss with the panel is around the future of CRM in terms of social media. I believe this to be a massive area both for organisations and also for software companies, and so I'd like to motion that debate.
Good, thank you, thank you.
I'm Jo Causon. I'm CEO of the Institute of Customer Service, and I was saying earlier, my mum always says to me, "What do you do for a living?" So the Institute is about 3 things. It's about helping organisations to focus on their customers and to get much better at the impact of great customer service. It's secondly about helping individuals grow their skills in customer service and customer service being seen as a profession. And then the third area is around lobbying and supporting the direction of customer service in the UK. So that's working with the government and also indeed media colleagues. For me, this is probably one of the most critical times for customer service. 77% of GDP in the UK is service related. And in order for UK to perform on the global sphere, we really need to be taking a lead and a challenge actually in this area. For me, future trends, we've touched on some of those this morning, and I'm not sure Moira will cover off some key areas. But I talk about a renaissance in customer service. And what do I mean by that? For those of you that are the similar age to me, back in the 1980s, we used to talk about customer is king. For me now, customer service has taken on a whole new sphere. We're living in one of the toughest economic times that we've had. We're living with far more demanding customers. 75% of us are much more willing to complain than we were 5 years ago. We are given far more choice as consumers, and therefore as organisations responding to those challenges which our consumers are giving us are increasingly important. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity for organisations, but we really do need to be listening to our consumers far more.
Hello, I'm Martin Baker. I'm Worldwide IT Director for a company called Micro Focus, which you may not have heard of. It's a UK-based software company, FTSE 250, with a worldwide customer footprint. We're a business-to-business, not a business-to-consumer, so slightly different from some of my colleagues on the bench here. The two main areas that we focus on is obviously promoting self-service, because obviously it's cost efficient and also people can do it in their time, in their space. So whether it's upgrading their own software, and we provide very complex software. It's mission critical, complex software, but typically the customer support and interaction is between technicians. And I think some of the emotion, it can be stress because it's in terms of time critical, but technical competence always wins out over and above stress. If people think that they're dealing with somebody who's good, then they're actually prepared to be patient and actually work through the problem itself. So we have documentation, we have knowledge bases, we encourage the use of them. And in the US, those hardly get used at all, and it's not even using the web and the other services we provide for logging incidents. They still like phoning and using the old IVRs to diagnose and get through to technicians. On the other side, our other main thrust is making sure you know who they are. It sounds trite, but it's one of the main things. I think we're very, very fortunate in our organisation is we have a single instance of an application that covers all the interactions that we've had with our customers. And therefore we know whether there's a sales activity going on, whether they've got a case in hand, whether they've downloaded white papers off the website. So that, when you talk about the 360, I think we're about 720, is a case of every time there's a touch, we store it. That, I believe, is necessary, but is not necessarily sufficient, because having that information is only as good as the people that try to use it and use it during the process of interaction with the customer. So we think that, and again, even though we have that system, keeping it up to date, making sure it's there is more of a crusade than a short event. So I think the two thrusts for us is making sure that we keep the information up to date so we can have that customer intimacy, and making sure we promote other ways that people can do things in their own times, whether it's through forums. If we have technical customers, they go to forums. They do that sort of community help processes as well, which we try and help and support rather than just relying on us. I think those are the two main areas. And social CRM is only through the blogging and through the forums as such for us at the moment.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Martin. And then Michael.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Wallis. I'm the Customer Care Support Manager at Page & Moy Travel Group. My job is to look after our customers whilst they're on their holidays and also when they come back as well. I just wanted to put in perspective, really, the industry that I'm in terms of holidays. Everybody loves their holidays. Everybody loves a good holiday. Everybody needs a holiday when they come back from their holiday. And looking after people on their holidays is actually a bit of a challenge. We even have our own TV programmes destined just to look after holidays from hell, that sort of thing. So holiday management, holiday customer service, looking after them on their holidays is a tricky business, but it's something that I do for my living. And we use it as a service differentiator, really, to try and look after our customers, to make them book with us again and again and again. We take a kind of common sense approach to customer service. We know that we need to delight our customers whilst we're on holiday. We know that sometimes things will go wrong. In our industry, it's not just the things that we do, it's things that we don't do that can affect our holidays. Things like volcanic ash, tsunami recently. I could reel off a whole long list of things that disrupt our customers' holidays. But we need to do what we can to make sure they have a good time, they're looked after, and we use the service that we provide to differentiate our product from everybody else. However, I don't think we can rest on our laurels, and it's worrying to hear the statistics that we're coming up with about how many people are willing to complain, and we need to embrace that so we can move with the times. So that's my angle today.
Thanks, Michael. And then Mathew.
Hello, I'm Mathew James from Home Retail Group, which is Argos and Homebase. I think our view of the world is that complaints are always going to exist. I think no matter what we do or what we say, complaints are always going to be around. And I think once that we acknowledge and accept that fact, I think there's three key areas that are going to help us deal with complaints once they arrive. I think the first one is culture. I think industry has to decide what it wants to do. Does it want to satisfy its customers within complaints, or does it want to delight them? And I think there's a clear distinction between those two things. I think if I was to come back to you and say that I'd been to a restaurant and I was satisfied with the food and service, or I was to come back and say I was delighted with the food or service, I think I know which statement might drive you to go and try the restaurant yourself. And I think as businesses in the various different industries, our aim should be to delight our customers within the complaints arena. I also think as well that we've got to try and decide what our objective is within the complaints arena. What culture do we want? Do we want to be looking at quantity or quality? I think a number of businesses go down the road of actually, imposing strict KPIs to the complaints arena. So, you've got to handle so many complaints an hour, you've got to write so many letters an hour. It's driving businesses down the road of being more concerned about figures and actual quality. And I think that sort of talks to the fact about 75% of customers are unhappy with the level of customer services that they actually receive. Mm-hmm. The second key ingredient is people. You obviously got to have the right people doing the right things in the right way. And it's your people who are going to drive the culture that you want within your business. Culturally, you've got to be sound. The third bit is technology. You've got to have the right systems in place. These systems have got to be intuitive, intelligent, and user-friendly. And they've actually got to tell you something. If your systems don't tell you anything, then actually what's the point in having them? You have to go back to the drawing board and determine, what do we need to do to get the right information out. And as home retail groups regulated by the Financial Services Authority, we certainly can't be dealing in systems that don't provide the right sort of information. Just covering the bit about social media, I think industry has to start using this an awful lot more now. The likes of Twitter and Facebook. Customers use these areas now as legitimate complaint channels. And I think as business, we need to actually try and catch up with our customers and get on the same page as them, but ultimately get a few pages ahead of them so we're ready for the challenge when it actually arrives. And I guess to end on a positive note, I think from my view of the world, complaints are actually a very positive thing. They tell us as business what we do well and what we can actually do better. And I think industry right across the piece has to embrace that information and use it for the betterment of both the business and the customer.
Thanks, Matthew. Can I pick up on that last point, second to last point, which is why we use Twitter and these different channels as legitimate complaints channels. Surely we're doing that because we feel as if actually companies aren't listening to us. You complain, you phone up, you can't get through on the telephones, you write, nothing happens. So out of absolute desperation in the end, you either make a YouTube video or you go on Twitter or you do something. I mean, do you think that's very much the case?
I think that's the way it was to begin with, but I think the world has shifted. I think to begin with, that's where we are at. It was a case of people would go through these social media programs to do that. But I mean, just the other day, I saw something from Andrew Neil from the BBC. Mm-hmm. Something had gone wrong in an airport where some luggage had been lost. And his first call was to go to Twitter to ask people which hashtag phrase he should be using to get a response. So it wasn't that he'd gone to the airport and he'd kicked up a fuss. It was actually, this is a legitimate complaint channel and I want to raise it through.
So they've gone straight to that.
Absolutely.
But is that not bad news? Ladies and gentlemen, for companies, and that they're not getting the opportunity themselves to respond. It's going public straight away.
Moira, if I can pick up, I think there's several things. For me, the whole area of social media is clearly a growing important channel, but it is one channel. And this morning we've had a lot of debate about what is important to us as consumers. Well, choice is one of those. And therefore, depending on who I am and being treated as an individual, I may actually use one of the social media channels, I may pick up the phone, I may write, I may email. The thing for me is how fast an organisation can resolve that challenge or that complaint. And Moira, I will just also challenge around the state of customer service in the UK, and you knew I would do this anyway, for those of you that were here this morning. The Institute undertakes a survey twice a year for 26,000 consumers across a whole range of industry sectors. And it's interesting, we've been doing this for the last 3 years, and in the 3 years we've seen a movement of a score from 66 to 77 out of 100 in terms of level of satisfaction. So what we are seeing across all of those sectors is an increasing level of satisfaction. However, and there is a big however, there is no room for complacency, and I would totally agree with you, Moira, over that. And also, we know that you need to be scoring 80 or above to be getting that return on investment in terms of customer service.
Okay, but Borders had 90% customer satisfaction,
Yeah.
and they've gone bust.
Yes.
So please, what more could they have done? They had shops all over the place full of really, really happy customers reading their books, drinking their coffee, really, really nice community thing going on there, but nobody was buying anything. Pepsi did a really expensive campaign which was very, very successful. Everybody loved it. They had thousands of tweets and vast numbers of Facebook people said positive things. They didn't sell any more Pepsi. Customer satisfaction isn't the complete goal, is it? So if it's not the complete goal, how can you do both things? How can you sell more product and keep your customers happy?
I can pick up on that one if you like. I think the important thing is to get the balance, because you can't have a business which just does customer service, and you can't have a business which just does commerciality, for want of a better phrase, because if you don't get the balance right, then you go up, in the example of Borders. Now, the example of Borders, it was just a very nice library. And I used to go there, and it was good. I used to love going there. You sit down, you'd buy the coffee, but you wouldn't buy anything else. You'd have a good flick through, and that was that. We found in our industry, with our holidays, that it's the people that make a difference. And just to give you, we're talking about some stats today, I'll give you some stats from my business. When we send out our post-holiday questionnaires, the scores that our tour guides get, it's 90%. That was the figure that we got last year, because we know that they make a difference. When we look at the feedback that we get from our letters, it is mostly about the people on those holidays. We take people all over the world, the Great Wall of China, the Grand Canyon. They don't write in and say, thanks for taking me to see the Great Wall of China. They say, thanks for Frank showing me around the Great Wall of China. Wasn't he great? Because it's the people. And that's how we've differentiated our service. And to turn that into a business gain, we now put Frank in our brochures and on our websites. His name isn't Frank, by the way. Whatever his name is.
What a disappointment.
It's all right. Okay, his name's Jonathan, actually.
Jonathan.
We'll use his own name.
Jonathan, you've got another...
But the point is that you've then used that service to differentiate you, make your product stand out, people like it, and then you can use it as a sales tool.
So what should Borders have done?
Borders, they should charge people an entry fee. That's what I'd have done if it were my business, but what do I know about book selling?
So do you think you can reach CRM nirvana? Do you think you can keep most of the people happy most of the time from a Page and Moy perspective?
Unfortunately, I'd have to cite volcanic ash, tsunamis, BA's cabin crew going on strike, unrest in the Middle East to say, unfortunately, no, I can't. But they provide me with wonderful opportunities to show how good we are.
Exactly.
But they do also make people unhappy some of the time.
Exactly. I mean, the old adage about, if you're dissatisfied, you're going to tell 1 in 20 people.
Well, we've actually tested that. The theory that if you treat complaining customers well, they are more loyal to you. Yeah. We actually did that. Yeah. And our rebooking ratio for complainers was higher than for the rest of our business.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
And we've actually got the stats to back that up. Now, that for me was a bit of a theory that no one had ever tested. No. But we could actually do that in our business.
That's fantastic. In terms of then, you can just bring it back, so the social media side of things, of that 1 in 20, I don't think that stat is going to stack up very much longer in terms of the amount of people and the reach that people have got through the social media channels. Because all of a sudden we're talking about, we mentioned the stat earlier, I found it fascinating when I was researching, that the third largest nation globally now is Facebook. We have China, we have India, and then we have Facebook. And, in terms of the reach, in terms of even if you hit, 10% of your friends that you forward this dissatisfaction on Facebook, everybody has got, on average, 132 contacts. So therefore, if you say to 10% of your contacts and you forwarded your dissatisfaction onto those, it's literally 3 or 4 clicks before you're into millions of people. And that has a massive power to be really, really negative. Now, in terms of then how companies deal with that, for me, it's not, there's no magic wand that you can wave to blow away the volcanic dust, unfortunately. But in terms of, if you can then react quickly, and you can, it's more than half the battle is actually responding positively back, saying thank you very much for your complaint. You know what, we're treating you as a person as opposed to leaving you on the East Coast main line for 5 hours at a time to walk back to your nearest station, then, at that particular point, you're 9/10 of the battle.
Absolutely. But do you have to keep raising the bar, though? I was on a judging committee quite a large judging committee for some awards. I shan't say any more than that. We didn't give this particular award to American Express for the way they handled volcanic ash, because the argument of the majority was that, but that's what they do. They do customer service. That's what they sell their product for. So therefore, they shouldn't have the award because that's what they
should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
But I think
So we
this
gave it to somebody else who raised the bar for their particular company, and therefore, how many, what could Amex have done? They would have had to they would have had to. I can't imagine what they could have done more. But you're nodding. If they've got to raise the bar, how far has the bar got to go up?
And I think it's a really important question, to be quite honest with you, because what we are seeing, back to this point about the fact that as consumers we're far more demanding. So there's an expectation. The other thing too is that we will judge all of the experiences we have by our favourite experience too. So I will judge my experience in the public sector, for example, or telecommunications against my experience in Waitrose. I don't discriminate anymore between each of those things. So the expectation of us is that actually that's a hygiene factor. I expect to be served well. However, and I think this is quite an important point of around that engagement, and we touched on this a little bit this morning about, and I mentioned about measurement. So measuring customer satisfaction is really important, measuring loyalty is really important, all of those things. But the emotional levels of engagement and really touching me at an emotional level will become increasingly important. And I gave an example this morning of Eurostar, one of our case studies, of where they had gone out as part of their engagement of their customers. And they weren't just asking about how clean are the trains, was your food good, etc. It was about how did this experience make you feel. And I think going forward, the future of this, a great example for me was, somebody was doing their 60th birthday. So people were talked about, now this is your mum, and she's celebrating her 60th birthday. So how would you treat your mum on that experience? So that it's more of a life experience, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I see a move now to all of those hygiene factors, absolutely. I expect the product to do what it says. I expect to have a competent person, knowledgeable person having a good conversation with me. I expect resolution. And I also want to be treated as this individual. So how did it make me feel through that interaction? And I think that's really interesting. And the other thing, sorry Moira, I'll just say about social media for me. The future is about not so much of around, and you touched on this, Moira, about 80% of us want to initiate that contact, us as consumers. And I talked about this morning about co-creation and collaboration. I think that's a really interesting future where we as consumers are now wanting to say, actually, can I tell you what I'd like that product or that service to be like? And I think that explores a really interesting future for organisations.
Joe, just picking up on that. I think it almost comes back to what I was saying before about this whole quantity versus quality thing, that the idea of wanting to know how you feel as a consumer, that's what it's all about. Businesses need to start trying to move away from this idea of saying, well, we've handled X amount of calls per hour, so actually everything must be tickety-boo. Because, okay, you've obviously got to do that because there's financial implications and you've got to provide that service, I understand that. But there has to be a quality factor to that thing as well. You've got to be doing that and treating people as individuals.
So Mathew, do you think then that CRM and contact management strategies can help raise the bar that we just talked about before? Do you think they can do that?
I think they can. I think I've seen various businesses within the complaints arena, try and actually bring a complaints team in and fit a call centre mentality around it and fit a call centre sort of culture around it. So again, certain expectations, KPIs, if you've got to handle this many calls, you've got to handle this many complaints. That's not what the customer wants. At the end of the day, if you've taken the time as a customer to put a full and frank letter together with a number of different issues being raised, you expect a full and frank letter coming back to you with every single one of those points being responded to. And I think, far too often in the business, across various industries, that's the mentality we see. It's all this thing about just trying to get through volume. And I think we've really got to try and move away from that and start putting more focus on the quality of what we do.
Yeah, that's interesting. Martin, do you have
No,
a
I
view
agree
on that,
completely.
really? Do you
I
think it's
agree.
possible?
We're in a different world. I work in a very different world to the business to consumer, but it's very much a case of our customer service. We have the escalations back into our development group, so it is. We've got to fix it. Right? If there's a problem, we've got to fix it. Some of these are mission critical systems running banks and pension funds and the like. We can't just say, "I'm sorry." Right? So it is a case of making sure you do stick with it. And again, it's understanding. When the guy rings back again, we've got to know he's ringing back again. It isn't the first touch. So capturing all that information and creating that intimacy is so important. Otherwise, you just get very annoyed customers. We've got customers. We're 35 odd years old. We've got customers we've had from the beginning. And okay, you could say some of our products could be very sticky, right, and they can't walk away from them. They would find a way to move away from our products if we weren't giving good service. So it is the fact they can rely on us, the fact that we're there for them, the fact we know what they've got, what they're doing. That's the sort of thing that engenders the relation. That's the R in CRM. That's the relationship that we have. That means you could provide support. And I'm sure at times we don't provide as good support as we could. But if the relationship's there, you can then address it.
So in your industry, what do you think is the true cost of dissatisfaction? As you say, they can't just walk away from it.
Over the long term, they can. In the short term,
Yeah.
they can't, but over the long term, they can. And so you do lose customers. And certainly, we've got some very mature products where it's a case of how those products evolve is based on what our customers are. I mean, that's another side of the relationship, is we're evolving our products now to meet the customer's needs rather than any idea that we've got of our own. With the newer products, very much we're making sure we define what they're going to be and going forward. So it's just I refer to it as intimacy. It's just knowing who the hell they are.
How do you stop call centre staff feeling that one response is sufficient? You know, I answered their letter, or I called them back. Okay, so they're not happy. What do you think I should do about it? You know, I called them, but that's not actually conflict resolution, is it?
No.
Can you put that into a system?
Yeah, you can get them closed off. You get it closed off. It's a closed loop, and we do a survey immediately afterwards. And it's okay if your system isn't working because of our product, you aren't gonna stop. I mean, you've got to get your system working
But
again.
the
So we
call
have that.
centre staff can say they've written things down, but haven't. I mean, that's happened to me loads of times. And I say, well, you know, the last person I spoke to said they'd written it all down. There's nothing on your notes, and that's final. You know, there is nothing on your notes. Go away. It's from a customer point of view, there's nowhere else to go after that.
The root cause of that, though, is comes back to the cultural side of things. You've got to have your business set up in a way with people that actually want to do the job and do it fantastically well. I mean,
But they're not paid a lot, are they?
But it sort of goes beyond money. At the end of the day, you've got people it does. If you've got people as part of your organisation within that role, if you build the culture that you're after, then you can get people, working in that way. From a home retail point of view, with Argos, our customer care team began in May 2009, and it was a fresh page, and we looked at it by saying we want to have this quality approach, and we want to have a positive culture, and we almost set it up as almost like a sales environment. So in effect, it was, as a complainter, you can perhaps look at it and sometimes think it might be a bit downbeat, a bit miserable. It was very energetic. It was full of people who wanted to do the job. Customer satisfaction went up. We reached the final four of Small Team of the Year for the European Call Centre Awards. It can work. And that's why I don't think it's about money. It's about actually having people who want to be there because they enjoy the job.
It's not also about... there's a careful play there between the people. And you mentioned, can your system do that? Well, yes, a complaint system can. But in terms of can it actually automatically say, hey, this person hasn't written down everything? Well, you could probably make it do it, but you'd spend an awful lot of money. And so there's a careful play, therefore, between your level of investment that you're going to have in IT and your processes, and then also in the people as well. And, you invest in good people, and you put the right processes in there to make sure that they're actually really engaged and bought into what you want to do and what your culture is in your business. But equally, you've then got to put in something to support them, which will then have the KPIs, the statistics. Again, you mentioned, I think, earlier in terms of it's got to tell you something, because if it doesn't tell you something, so there's two things it can tell you. It can tell you that people aren't doing things, which is somewhere where people don't actually spend very much time. And yes, certainly it can tell you, hey, look, you know what, we're doing all of these wonderful things. In actual fact, with good complaints management feedback system like the response system, you can actually get in there and say, well, actually, who's filling these things, who's not doing them correctly, and then you go back to training the people, and then you come out, it's a managerial problem. But don't beat the system up because of a managerial problem, or you're employing the wrong type of people.
Moira, can I add to this? Because one of the things that I think is critical now and will become even more critical is the alignment of your people, your processes and your strategy. And those organisations that genuinely take that to their heart and generally address that will be the ones which will outperform, I believe, going forward. And that does mean that your leadership, and we touched again on that this morning, your leadership has to be very focused. You know, your whole DNA is around the customer, but you also need to be managing and leading your people in a way that they are very clear about what your business strategy is and what your customer service strategy is. And they need to be linked. And that, for me, is one of the most fundamental ways that organisations can lead that forward.
We've actually done some research at Henley Business School that looks at what are the foundations for successful CRM, and basically we liken it to a three-legged stool. And one leg of the stool is got to be, you've got to have a good marketing strategy. You've got to really know who your customers are. You've got to have good customer insight. You've got to understand what it is that they want and look at the right kind of proposition and so forth. You've got to have the right people, the right culture climate, the right leadership, and of course you've got to have the right IT. The problem is that some companies bolt the IT piece on first and then worry about the climate and the marketing strategy. And of course what you've really got to do is get the marketing strategy and the culture and the climate bit right first and then put on the IT. And where companies do that, it's massively successful. You know, it's very successful.
Absolutely, and that's exactly findings that I've had in the last 6 years, looking at organisations when we're in there and we've sold a CRM product to our customers. The customers that are the most successful are the ones that have, we've got a change management process that is running alongside this. There's a cultural change that needs to happen with an organisation for CRM really to be truly successful, because it's never going to be successful as a pure IT. And so therefore we have to make sure that these things are in place. One of our most successful implementations was with a Swiss private bank, and I stood up in front of a room of 60 people. I said, how many people have been involved in a CRM project? And there was about 40 people. How many people have been involved in a successful CRM project? 0. Absolutely 0. And it was like, fantastic, we've got a captive audience now. And the reason is because they were banging their head against the same problems and they were just wanting to do things. Now, that was a tricky project for us because we made them step back and think about the people side of things. They didn't want to. People don't like talking about it because it gets into, we mentioned emotions and feelings. You have to enter into that realm for these projects to be truly successful.
So what then do we think are the key challenges and opportunities for perhaps the next decade for CRM going forward? Let's maybe take the challenges first. What do we think are the major challenges going forward? I mean, clearly the people bit is one. Anything else?
But I do think, as Colin was saying, it's making sure we are in tune with all the channels that people are using. So whether it's the Twitters, the Facebooks, the forums, the blogs, so that we actually can, support and react to them. I mean, it's even things like, having a Skype address that people can call into the call centre. So, I mean, it's all those sorts of things that you want to open up to make it easy for people to access you in the appropriate manner for them.
And on that note, can I please beat the drum of multi-channel integration so that no matter which channel you use, you should feel as if you're dealing with the same company?
Yes.
Lovely example I had, and I won't say the name of the company, but a telco company, and I'd gone in, bought a phone from the shop, didn't like the phone, wanted to take it back, and you can take it back within 2 weeks. I couldn't remember the date I was supposed to take it back, so I phoned up the call centre and they said, bring it back by Saturday, that's fine. I thought, I won't risk Saturday, I'll take it back on the Thursday. I took it back to the shop and they said, no. Call centre's Saturday, the shop's Wednesday. You should have brought it back Wednesday. Can you now wrap it up and post it to the call centre? No. They had different systems. Can you believe that? Same company, different systems. So that multi-channel integration, having the same feeling that you're dealing with the same company no matter which channel, you get treated in the same way no matter which channel, hugely important. So I think that's a great challenge, actually.
And that's why I say I think we're very fortunate having a single system, so it's multiple channel, multiple interactions with the customer, it's all in one place.
Fantastic.
Making sure we use it effectively is the next challenge. That's the people and the drive of what we want to do with it.
And
Joe, you're going to say?
I was going to say, absolutely to that point, as consumers, we want simplicity.
Oh, yes.
Because we're living in a very complex world, so therefore having, making things easier for me as a consumer. And exactly to that point, if I bought it online, I want to be able to take it back to the shop.
Yes.
So that whole piece about aligning our channels, but also creating that as a simple process for me to follow, because I just need it simple.
Just joined up, really.
Yeah. Any other challenges?
I think I like to do a warning a bit like you're beating the drum for multi-channel. I'd like to say, don't ever kid yourself you've got a loyal customer, because this what doesn't exist. I mean, I think Amazon's a really good point. I adore Amazon. I love to have their emails arrive because they're always funny, even if, I don't want to read the books. It's always interesting seeing what they think they should suggest to me. Great fun. But if they go wrong, if I find somebody who's doing a better service than they are, if I find their morals begin to go a bit pear-shaped, if they start trying to sell me things in a way I'm not happy with, I shall go somewhere else, if there is somewhere to go. The same goes for my Apple iPhone, which I adore. If there's a better product, I'll go to that better product. And right now, I'm an absolute Groupon fan. But I'll stay with Groupon until there's somebody that offers me even better deals. And I think I would say that if we all put our hands on our hearts and we're totally honest, we'd all agree with that. And I think if you're complacent, if you think that there is loyalty in this world, because there isn't.
But I think also on that, I'd like to almost challenge that in terms of people, the social customer that the era we're moving into. Trust actually is becoming much more on their social network.
They trust strangers.
So I will trust,
but not companies.
No. If I'm
yeah.
I was coming here today. Where was the first place? Well, what's the hotel like? Where did I go? TripAdvisor.
Absolutely.
4.5 stars. It must be a great place. I look forward to that. Yeah. It's great. And
is Groupon giving me a special offer tonight?
Absolutely,
yeah.
It's people like me, and so therefore it's all of a sudden you feel warm and fuzzy, and so we're back to the feelings. Oh, I'm going to be happy there because I know. Yeah. And we're becoming much more savvy as customers. Yeah.
We're grouping, aren't we? We're
yes,
actually,
we
are. And actually, we're looking for less products, and people are actually being fed the products from our social networks.
I mean, we're not trusting people anymore.
We're trusting people. We're not trusting organisations.
Yeah. And I was going to say, in fact, we trust the supermarkets more than the police, the government, and the banks. Which
we don't actually trust them that much, do we? I mean,
no, but in comparison to the police, the government, and the banks, it's pretty good going, isn't it?
But the point this morning about the use of social media and the fact that we trust our peer recommendations more than we trust advertising. I think for me, going forward, the key thing for organisations, and it sounds really simple to do, but it's to view everything through the lens of the customer. So it's about turning everything inside out, and that's exactly to your point of about we are more changeable, we have more choice. That will not stop. We're going to talk far more as groups. So organisations really need to look outside.
Yeah. And look at the benefits. What am I offering my customers? Yeah. Is that actually worth it?
Has that value?
Yeah.
TripAdvisor is a big issue in the travel industry. Obviously. You'd be surprised, unfortunately, how many people look at TripAdvisor after they've bought a holiday, which is the wrong way of doing it, you'd think, but they do. Fortunately, none of the hotels that we use are on TripAdvisor, and if they are, they've got wonderful feedback, obviously, for the camera. But what I would say is that I would question slightly your comment about loyalty, because I think when people are spending a lot of money, there is loyalty. It does exist because they want to trust somebody with that purchase. Now, you're talking about a book. You can buy a book from Amazon, you can buy a book from Tesco, you can buy a book from whoever. A book is a book. Don't get me wrong, it might be your favourite book, but there's lots of people that do it and can do it well. However, particularly one of the companies that we have, a company called Just You Holidays, which is for people travelling on their own, not necessarily singles or dating, but people who just like to travel because their partner doesn't want to go abroad or whatever. They are looking for more of a social environment. They are looking to trust their money with somebody, and therefore who they choose is absolutely crucial, which is why we are finding that that's the biggest growth area for us. And they are willing to invest that money with us because they can trust us. And there is loyalty. And our repeat booking rate
I'm not
is
saying
sky high.
that you can't keep people coming to you if you provide a good service. But what I'm saying is they will soon stop if you stop delivering. And you're only as good as your last holiday.
I think you are, but I also think there's a step in between that where they give you an opportunity to put it right. And that perhaps is an area that Mathew and I are kind of more kind of specialised in, is that they will write to you. And just to pick up on some of the other points, you've got to give them the route to do that, and you've got to make it easy. And actually, one of the questions we ask on our Welcome Home questionnaire is, would you recommend us to a friend? Apparently, that is the ultimate question. It's not whether you would book with us again, because that's you might do, you might not do. Your circumstances might change, they may not. But when you walk out of your house and you talk to your friends and your neighbours, would you say, I went with the Page and More Travel Group, that was great? Well, we hope you would. That's more of a question. So that's that kind of feeling loyalty question as opposed to a vague indication of future activity. So no, I'd absolutely say that loyalty for us is key and is high.
Any other challenges, Mathew?
Yeah, I think that I talked earlier about the social networks and social media. I guess we need to be very clear. That's going to be a challenge over the next 10 years, because it's not just a case of that all businesses need to go run into these networks and jumping on board and using them. I think one of the stats you came up with earlier on, Moira, was that customers like to initiate the conversation with the businesses themselves,
Yes,
rather than the
yeah.
businesses come to them. And I think that's where you've got to be very, very careful with the social media, because just because somebody says a service is bad, you know, how do you handle that as a business? Do you go and challenge that with the customer, or, you know, how do you go about dealing with that situation? Because you don't want to sort of get into the mentality of Big Brother and we're watching everything that you're saying, because that takes us into completely different territory then. I mean, I had an example last week coming back from a train. I mentioned I was a bit fed up on the train. I got home and there's somebody following me all of a sudden from Twitter, from that area. Exactly, and it's like, not sure how comfortable I am with that, but I guess that's going to be one of the challenges over the next 10 years. Not just a case of saying that we've got all this media, let's use it. I think we need to use it responsibly and figure out how we do that.
There is one.
I think CRM allows companies to become best of class, even if they're not the biggest. I think the challenge for CRM is in the small company market, because it's too expensive for a lot of the time for small companies to do it, but also small companies don't necessarily feel they have the need or the resources to do CRM, and I see that as being the challenge for the CRM companies to do the sort of sage version for the small businesses. But I think for those that do it well, I think the returns can be extraordinary.
Perhaps in the bit of time we've got left, I could throw it open to the floor, actually. Have any ladies and gentlemen on the floor got any questions for the panel or any comments? Yeah?
And really, I'm just wanting to get an understanding from the panel, if there is anything further, about what are we looking at once Facebook is no longer here and Twitter's no longer here, and how does that influence essentially CRM nirvana in the next 10 to 15 years? And also, something that I haven't heard mentioned is globally. That feels quite UK-centric, so what is happening globally, emerging markets, etc.?
I'll pick up on the first point. I mean, that's really for CDC software, the pivotal product in terms of their social media application. One of the things, it's not a standalone application. It goes with their CRM. We're not talking, or I'm certainly not talking about just managing the social media channels in isolation. This is very much part of a company's CRM process and strategy and customer strategy. So it's got to be joined up. You've got to have one. So if Facebook disappears, you don't lose all of your contacts. You've still got all of your other contact information there for your customers, for your prospects, for your leads, for your opportunities. So in actual fact, in making that investment, it's not a throwaway investment, because you've actually captured those relationships. It's just giving you a different view on the data which you already have.
But just getting back, if we hold the technology bit for a minute, the Facebook is the platform to deliver messages, etc.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if the panel have a view about what that might look like in the future.
I think what's interesting is I don't think Facebook will completely disappear, but our view on it will change. For example, Microsoft used to be okay; it's now not. Google is moving from being hero to enemy. Facebook very nearly did. They thought about putting charges in, then they thought about having rules over what you could put up and what you couldn't, and having ownership of stuff. They realised just in the nick of time that was hugely dangerous and people would leave in their droves, and they stopped that happening. So far they've been very, very clever and got to the edge and pulled back. Now, one of these days they're going to get arrogant and they're just going to stop paying attention and they'll fall off their pedestal. And other companies, of which we don't know the names, will come and take their place in another form. Who knows? I mean, who could have imagined Facebook?
The problem is, if you say you're going to be the next thing, you've automatically killed your product. Because everyone sees you as being incredibly arrogant. That's something that Facebook never did. What they did was they made themselves backwards compatible with MySpace, so you could port lots of pictures and things like that. And you asked a question. You mentioned Facebook. The next social media, whatever it is, it probably hasn't even been invented yet. No. In fact, the people who invented it probably haven't been born yet. But when it happens, people have invested so much time and effort into that Facebook profile. I think I've got 13,000 pictures on mine.
Yeah, you're not going to go lightly, are you?
Yeah, I mean, my life is cataloged on this silly electronic profile, but I want to keep it. So whoever comes in next with that great, brilliant idea, they're going to have to say, well, you can take all your pictures, you can take everything with you. So it won't actually, I mean, while it will be a big jump for customers, I think businesses will be able to fairly easily evolve and be able to move with the customers without any huge shift.
They're all trying to stop that because they're all putting in hundreds of patent applications to try and ring fence their technologies. It's very interesting how that one pans out.
Thanks.
I found the debate very interesting, by the way. And I was going back to the point on borders, and sorry to bore you with borders. And actually, I think it plays into the whole CRM and social space. Because unless you've got a fundamentally sound business model, the proposition that you're taking to market, all the best customer service in the world isn't going to make your company profitable.
Yeah.
So if borders are being put out of business because Amazon are just being incredibly monotonous at delivering their very good service, and
cheap
Amazon
prices.
can capture more of the margin, more of the economic rent than borders can, because they don't have the stores, they don't have the coffee, they don't have the company shares, they don't have people going in to flick through the books, to put thumbnails on them and everything else. They're going to win in the capitalist world, and we are in a capitalist world. And so I think that's fundamentally what we've got to remember is it's got to be a fundamentally sound business proposition. And I think the other thing that we're actually forgetting is that sometimes we always talk about great customer experience, and a lot of the customer experience we had earlier in the conference was about putting bad things right. And there are companies out there that just have this ability, as I say, the example for me is First Direct. They don't do anything phenomenally well, they don't do anything phenomenally badly. They just deliver their offer consistently for me for the last 22 years. And therefore, have they ever delighted me? Probably not. Have they ever completely failed me? No. That is loyalty, because you couldn't pry me away from them with a crowbar.
A very interesting thing happened at the conference. Moira and
we mustn't always talk about delighting and fandom and stuff like that, because there is something about having a sound business model and consistently delivering.
Yeah. Consistency, one of the key things that comes out. If you look again at the UK CSI, you look at the top performing organisations, they have continued to consistently perform at that level. So consistency is, and absolutely, you've got to have a good product and you've got to have a good business model. But the point for me is, please don't treat customer service as a bolt-on to that. It is a strategic heartland as part of your business model in terms of the delivery.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we must come to an end. So I'm just going to ask each of the panel members one sentence, okay? You can't get carried away here. So last word from each of them. We better start here with Mathew, yes?
Okay, I'm going to stick with what I said at the beginning. It's all about culture, and we've got to have a big focus on quality over quantity.
Lovely, thanks Mathew. Michael?
I'm going to get myself some more Facebook followers because I don't have 132. I've only got about 15. You're all here for me shortly.
So that's a Billy no mate, so we better move on. Jonathan?
Yeah, don't look for me on Twitter either, sorry, after all of that. No, really, it's consistency of people and process for me in terms of being able to deliver that message to our customers.
Great, thank you. Joe?
Alignment of business, your strategy, your people and your processes.
Thank you. And Martin?
I just think it's a case of maintaining the intimacy, make sure that people use it effectively in dealing with the customers.
Yeah. And for me, it's sort of close to Joe, really, in that having those foundations right, you've got to get the right strategy, you've got to have the right IT, and you've really fundamentally, in line with what Mathew says, you've got to have the right people delivering it, otherwise it's all going to go wrong. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.